So this is a video talking through the latest science on how to revise, also why we revise, and then follows on to talk about different revision techniques that may be useful for you. Revision overall is a way of going back through information to help you increase your understanding. For example, if you just sat through a lecture or just sat through a lesson without taking any notes and just listened to me talking, you would at a later date only retain about 5% of the information that was spoken about. If you read it in a textbook, on average you remember 10%. If it's a mixture of audio and visual, so this is like PowerPoints, videos, normally you remember about 20%. If you watch someone do a demonstration of a technique, for example, like a teacher doing a demonstration for practical at the front, on average you remember 30% of it. These are all examples of passive teaching methods. You're sitting there, you're not actually doing anything yourself. This, however, is very useful for us initially to explain new information and new terms, and which is why we do it at school. To actually put it into your long-term memory, you need to use more active teaching methods. For example, discussions in groups, actually doing practice yourself, so either doing a practical or doing practice test papers. And one of the best ways is actually to teach others. So what we're getting at here is what's in lessons is not good, and reading through your notes after a lesson is really ineffective. You'll waste a lot of time for a very small output. However, doing things like practice papers, by comparison, is extremely useful. Obviously, if you have no understanding of a topic, doing a practice paper would actually lead to greater stress levels. So you need to build up to doing practice papers. However, they're one of the most effective ways of revising once you've got through some basic sets first. So if we go back to thinking about why we bother revising, I'm sure all of you can remember your alphabet and things like common nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are probably less remembered than the alphabet. However, if you're asked a more specific fact from later on in your life, even though you learnt it more recently, it is likely you don't remember it as well. Have a think about the differences between the first two and the last two. What you'll probably find is that the things that you did early on in your childhood, number one, you went over them many times. So you reviewed it and you reviewed it, and it's information you've had kept using again and again. Now this, for example, the alphabet, even now, occasionally you have to put things in alphabetical order, so therefore you're continually reviewing it again and again now. For example, Bar Bar Black Sheep, chances are you haven't sung that very recently, so that's slightly harder to remember. What you were doing when your parents made you go do these songs again and again and again on different days, you were actually revising. What the science shows is that when you first learn something, you remember it completely. Within a day, you have forgotten 20% of it. By 3 days, you're down to 60%, and it just continues going down. So within a couple of weeks, if you haven't looked at something again, it's gone. What they have showed is if you then spend 20 minutes going back over things, if you spend 20 minutes going back over something that you've learnt a day later, it'll go back to 100%. That will stay in your mind this time for 2 days. If you then do another 20 minutes, it will stay in your brain for 3 days. And if you keep doing this repetitively, eventually it will stay in your long-term memory. When I'm saying 20 minutes, sometimes it's your 5-minute glance through a lesson, just put the keywords back in your head is enough. If, for example, you made index cards as you went along with each topic and just quickly flicked through them before the next lesson, that's enough to put the keywords back in your head and will help you learn the whole topic. Overall, people tend to think of people being into 3 different revision groups: visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. These are the 3 main groups, and people used to think you were one or the other, or the other. However, most people learn by all three methods, and it's just the proportion they are. So all three methods are useful, however you will probably have a favourite you go to first. Some subjects suit one version of revising better than others. That's to comes down to trial and error to find what's out best for you. Overall, however, it has been shown through multiple studies now that if you compare typing notes up on a computer to actually handwritten notes, you are likely to remember 40% more information if you did handwritten notes. This is due to the fact that actually writing is slower than typing, which gives your brain more time to correctly file the information so you can recall it later. Pencil's even slower than pen, so therefore if you write your notes in pencil, you have got an even greater chance of remembering it. This is one of the reasons why people quite often when they're thinking and brainstorming use a pencil, because it gives them a chance for their brain to fully process the idea and come out with a sensible wording for the answer. One of the other strange bits of research that's come out is if you initially focus on learning the concepts, i.e. the big ideas, the main ideas of a topic booklet for a subject, you'll then have a better understanding of how your keywords, key language fit into that concept, and therefore have a greater ability to remember the individual key words, key figures, key dates, for example, in history, and therefore that would increase your grade. So rather than starting by highlighting keywords in a topic booklet, for example, it's better to actually use a different colour highlighter and highlight what the key ideas for the lessons. And obviously in our topic booklets, the way to look at what the contents of the topic were is to look at the scheme of work. In our booklets that are at the back of every single biology booklet, you can also get a copy of the entire course's worth from the AQA website. If we're going to be looking at concepts first, then a good place to start would be to do a mind map of the concepts. So for example, you start off with the whole of biology and split it into key veins of ideas, and then work from the key ideas down to smaller ideas, and then work to the keywords. So even though mind maps are quite hard to do, take quite a lot of time to write up, they are a very good way of doing this. It's brilliantly with large topics, and it's a very way of getting the concepts in your head. I would like to point out that using colour makes it also easier to remember, and drawing pictures as well as writing words is another way of increasing the different types of learning you're doing. Drawing is kinesthetic. If you're visual, then having the pictures helps. And if you're auditory, this is not quite as good way of doing it, but it does really help for both the kinesthetic and the visual. The auditory way of doing this would be to explain the processes and all the concepts to somebody else. Now this could be explained to a friend at school, it could be explained to your parent, or in my case, I used to explain to my teddy bear, on the basis that my teddy bear was not going to get upset if I got it wrong, but it meant that I could work out when I was struggling, because I would struggle to actually come up with sentences that made sense to me. And hearing things out loud quite often makes you realise whether or not your sentence structure is correct or wrong. Very good for languages as well. Once you've got your concepts embedded, then the next stage of your revision is to get the nitty-gritty detail. And I'm a big fan of flashcards, but other people aren't. So when I do flashcards, I write like a key term or a key word on one side, and I'd write the definition on the other. I would start by looking at the definitions on one side, where I came to revising them, and thinking, can I think of the keyword that links to that definition? If I could do that, I would then have those cards turn the other way in my stack. So the second time through them, I'd have the stack. Some of them would come up with a keyword, and I had to say what the definition was. And the ones I was less sure on, I was still on stage 1, where I had the definition showed to me, and I had to remember the keyword. I would then, once I was confident I knew the keyword and the definition, I would move it out of that pile. As I started revising new topics, new key flashcards were added to the pile for words I needed to learn, but the other pile was also second pile was growing with ones where I was confident on my knowledge. With these ones I was confident, once I had a decent sized stack, I would then start sorting them into their concepts or into their topic. So therefore I was then using the keywords to actually then go back and revise the concepts a second time. An alternative way of doing this is also to then think about how can these keywords go into compare and contrast topics. So you can pick a topic and then take all the keyword cards from that topic and sort them into, could I go to contrast? And again you're revising the concept while revising your keywords. The more memorable you make your notes or your keyword cards or your flashcards, the better this would be. For example, if I was trying to look at conduction and convection, they are very similar words, easily confused. My card for conduction would probably on the back look like conduction, because ducts are solid, therefore that must be what happens in a solid. So please feel free to use pictures and use colour again in your index cards. It really does help for actually working out how you're going to learn. Obviously not suitable for everyone, but for anyone who struggles with spelling, this is a way of possibly helping with your spelling as well. One of the key ways of remembering large series of data, so this is very good for when you have, for example, in plants, you have the idea that water is taken up by a root hair cell, it then through osmosis moves to the xylem and goes up the xylem due to transpiration stream, and then at the leaf it is then by osmosis goes through the cells till it hits the spongy mesophyll and then diffuses out due to evaporation. Something like that, where you're learning a process that has things going in a certain order. One of the best ways to remember this is used by a lot of people, a lot of very great people at memorising information, is to think of something in your house or on your route to school. For example, I would use my get up in the morning, do my teeth, make my coffee, make my breakfast routine. To actually, for each one, put an image or put an index card at that place around your house. So as you're going around your house, you're remembering bits of information because you see them throughout the morning, and you get them multiple mornings, so you're revising it each morning. And then when you come around time to remember that information in an exam, you can go, oh, that's this route, and as you picture in your head yourself doing the morning routine, you will remember what card was where. Obviously, this method requires pre-planning more than the night before. It is very good for remembering totally unlinked items or for when it's something that you're really struggling to actually put in your head. So this is one when you've been going through the other previous techniques, when you're still struggling, this is a good one to try then. Other people quite enjoy, so these are slightly more passive processes. Read, cover, record, check. Very good for if you're trying to remember spellings, good for languages, for changing things for different languages, also good for biology spellings as well. Doing online quizzes or revision guides, exam questions is a good way of starting on the third level of revision, where you're starting to actually double check your understanding and recall the information. It's a good way of actually working out what areas you're still weak on, and so you know which areas you need to go back and revise more. BBC Bitesize is an excellent place to do this. This works both open and closed book, so if you get to a question where you look at it and think, I have no idea, actually pausing there and actually then going looking in an exam guide is a great way, revision guide, to actually see where you're losing marks because you don't know stuff. And again, make a note of that area. It's something you need to go back to again. Some people use Memorics to remember things in the correct order or to help them remember difficult words. For example, from biology, Mrs. Gren for remembering the processes that are needed for organisms to be alive. Rather than doing flashcards, some people make card sorts. Again, going through those helps with new link ideas that are needed to be like in a sequence. I sometimes call them dominoes, where they go all the way around in a complete loop. The last stage of your revision is to get hold of past exam questions for your exam board and have a go at doing them. Don't just do them, Then use the mark scheme to actively mark them. And by active marking, I mean when you don't get a mark, go back, read the question and think to yourself, why did it not occur to me to put that answer down? Is it because I just couldn't remember that piece of information at all? Or was it I didn't read the question correctly? This will also help with your exam technique. I hope these have been useful for you to help you see how to revise. Obviously, it will take practice. You need to be planning ahead for your revision. Thank you very much. Bye.